You stopped rushing to drown everything out. Not because life suddenly became easier. Not because the sadness fully disappeared. But because something inside you became too tired to keep abandoning itself every day. For a long time, you moved through your own feelings quickly. You noticed discomfort and immediately minimized it. You noticed exhaustion and called it weakness. You noticed distance inside yourself and filled every quiet moment before you had to sit with it. And after enough time, that way of living became automatic. You stopped checking how you actually felt before saying yes to things. Stopped noticing when your body was tense. Stopped recognizing when something was hurting you longer than it should have. You adapted to living disconnected from yourself so gradually that it barely looked unusual anymore. And maybe that's why the shift felt so quiet when it finally started happening. Nothing dramatic caused it, no huge realization, no life-changing moment. You just began noticing yourself again in very small ways. The way your chest tightened in certain conversations. The way some rooms exhausted you faster than before. The way your mind kept asking for silence even when everything around you told you to stay busy. At first, you almost ignored those things too. Because listening to yourself again can feel unfamiliar after spending so much time pushing yourself aside. There's a strange discomfort in slowing down enough to hear your own needs again, especially if you learn to survive by staying emotionally ahead of yourself all the time. DOT by staying useful, easy, adaptable. By becoming someone who could continue functioning no matter how disconnected they felt inside. And the difficult part is that it often works for a while. People continue seeing you as capable, reliable, strong enough. Meanwhile, something quieter begins happening underneath all of it. You start feeling absent from your own life. Not in dramatic ways, more in the small moments. You laugh at something, but feel strangely far away while doing it. You finish conversations and immediately feel tired afterward. You keep moving through routines without fully arriving inside them. And eventually, the exhaustion stops feeling emotional. It becomes physical too. Your body slows down before your mind does. Your energy disappears faster. Silence starts feeling less threatening than interaction. Not because you stopped caring about people, but because you became tired of constantly moving away from yourself in order to stay connected to everything else. That realization arrives quietly. And once it does, something subtle begins changing. You stop forcing yourself through certain things as aggressively as before. You pause longer before answering. You notice discomfort sooner. Not every feeling gets argued with immediately anymore. That part matters more than it first appears. Because sometimes reconnecting with yourself doesn't begin with confidence. It begins with finally believing your own exhaustion. Believing that something feels heavy without needing proof. Believing that your limits are real, even when nobody else fully sees them. Believing your own discomfort before trying to explain it away. And for someone who spent a long time disconnecting from themselves just to keep functioning, that shift can feel enormous internally while looking almost invisible from the outside. You may still look calm to everyone else, but internally, something has started softening. You no longer abandon every feeling the second it becomes inconvenient. You no longer silence yourself automatically just to maintain emotional stability around other people. And maybe the strangest part is how quiet this return feels. Movies make self-discovery look dramatic, like transformation arrives loudly, like clarity changes everything overnight. But often, returning to yourself looks much smaller than that. It looks like noticing you're tired and actually allowing the tiredness to exist. It looks like not forcing conversation when silence feels better. It looks like sitting alone without immediately reaching for distraction. Small things, almost invisible things, but they slowly begin rebuilding the relationship you have with yourself. And after emotional exhaustion, that relationship can feel unfamiliar at first. You may realize how often you ignored your own instincts, how quickly you dismissed your own discomfort. How much emotional energy went into staying available, understanding, flexible, calm, even when you were quietly disappearing underneath all of it. That realization is painful in a very specific way, because you start understanding that the distance you felt wasn't only between you and other people. Part of it was the distance between you and yourself. And once you notice that, certain things become harder to continue automatically. You start hearing yourself again. Not perfectly, not constantly, but enough. Enough to notice when your body tightens around something your mind keeps excusing. Enough to notice when certain interactions leave you emotionally drained for hours afterward. Enough to recognize when you need space before you fully collapse into exhaustion again. That kind of listening changes something quietly inside a person. Not in a motivational way, not in a new beginning way, more like a slow return of presence. As if parts of you that stayed silent for too long are no longer trying so hard to disappear. And there's something deeply emotional about realizing how much energy it once took to constantly move against yourself. To ignore what hurt, to ignore what exhausted you, to ignore what your body already understood long before your mind admitted it. Sometimes healing after emotional exhaustion doesn't feel hopeful at first. Sometimes it just feels quieter, softer, less forceful. Like you're no longer trying to outrun yourself all the time. And maybe that's where the return actually begins. Not in becoming someone new, not in fixing everything that hurts. Just in finally staying close enough to yourself to hear what's been there all along.